Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another trade dissection. I am Bearded Brother Matt, and just as I promised last time, I am here to introduce you to the wild, wacky world of Mike Milbury trades. Where to start? Well, I guess we should begin with just who in the hell is Mike Milbury? He was a defenseman in the NHL from 1974 to 1987 with the Boston Bruins, became their head coach in 89, led them to the Cup Finals and a trophy. Many accolades later in 95, he became the head coach of the New York Islanders, and within 3 months would be their general manager. That means he was in charge of making trades. In 97, he would step down as coach and just focus on being a GM. During his time here, he was known for three things: having to operate under an austere budget, drafting remarkable talent, and trading that talent away before it became remarkable. Also, for taking Rick DiPietro first overall over both Marian Gaborik and Danny Heatley. Heatley has his own trade dissection. We'll get to that one eventually. Today, that's not what we're talking about. Nor are we talking about the time he gave away the second overall pick in 2001 for Alexei Yashin. Today, we're talking about that time he would trade away potential future Hall of Famer Roberto Luongo. Now we have to answer, who's Roberto Luongo? Roberto Luongo is a fantastic goaltender that played in over 1,000 games, posted a career of .489, .392, and .33. Yeah, he played when ties were a thing. His career goals against average is a .252, and his career save percentage is .919. That's remarkable, especially considering when he played. However, Mike Milbury would have him for one of those seasons, and off he went. So, let's get into the actual trade. The Panthers would send forward Mark Parrish and forward Oleg Kavasha to the Islanders in exchange for forward Olli Jokinen and goalie Roberto Luongo. Okay, so that right there tells you Florida won the trade. I shouldn't even have to go into this, but for the sake of completion I shall. Maybe we'll find an interesting story in here. Let's look at the Islanders first, because quite frankly, I want to see what they got out of Mark Parrish and Oleg Kavasha. So, did Mike Milbury know more than anybody else? Did he have big brain? No! Let's start with Mark Parrish. He was a winger, and he wasn't bad. Not a star, but not bad. His career year came in 2001-2002 with the Islanders when he had 30 goals and 30 assists for 60 points in 78 games. Not bad. Sadly, he never topped 50 points at any other time in his career, and in the 05-06 season, he would be traded to the LA Kings. That trade was him and Brent Sopel headed to the Kings for Jeff Tambellini, Dennis Grebishkov, and a conditional 2006 third-round pick. The conditions of the pick were ultimately not met, so that stayed in L.A. Jeff Tambellini was a depth winger who spent a lot of time bouncing between the NHL and the AHL, never had a 20-point season even in the NHL, and was never traded. Whoop! That's the end of him. Dennis Grebishkov was a big defenseman with a lot of upside, or so it was thought. He made it one season in New York before being traded away. And this is going to get odd, so pay attention, because it's going to be time to follow the bouncing pick. Grebishkov was traded to Edmonton for a 2008 third-rounder, 73rd overall, and Marc-Andre Bergeron. Following the pick, that pick would be packaged with Alan Rourke and sent back to the Edmonton Oilers for the 2008 round 2 53rd overall pick that they would turn into Travis Hamonic. We'll get back to him. In the meantime, The Oilers, I just realized I misspelled Oilers. The Oilers would go ahead and they would have to trade away that pick because they would offer sheet Dustin Penner. The Ducks decided not to match that, so they got that pick. Now, why did I tell you about all of that? Because the Islanders would trade Marc-Andre Bergeron to the Anaheim Ducks for, hey, look, it's that same pick again. So that pick went from Edmonton to New York, back to Edmonton, over to Anaheim, and then back to New York. Did you follow all of that? Good, because I barely could, and I wrote this mess. That pick would eventually be used on Kirill Petrov. The closest he ever got to the NHL was 13 games in the AHL. Outside of that, he spent his career in KHL in Russia. Now, the second round pick, as we mentioned, was used on Travis Hamonic. Hamonic would be a very good part of the Islanders' blue line for years. Overall, that worked out very well for them. However, were the Islanders any good in that time? Kind of, but they only made the playoffs twice. So eventually he was traded out to the Calgary Flames. The deal was Travis Hamonic and a 2019 fourth rounder that would become Lucas Fuke. Probably mispronounced that, but again, don't care. To the Calgary Flames for a 2018 first rounder, a 2018 second rounder, and a 2019 second rounder. That 2018 second rounder was 43rd overall and was used on Ruslan Iksh. You know what? I don't even know how to say it. In a minute it'll be on the screen and you can try to pronounce it. He has 31 points in 40 games this year with the Islanders affiliate. Down in the AHL, and you know what? Looks like he could be pretty good. The second rounder 2019 was used on defenseman Samuel Bolduc. Bolduc is a big 6 foot plus, over 220 pound man on the blue line. He's played a few games in the NHL this year, but most of his time has been spent down with the Islanders AHL affiliate. But folks, I think he's going to be a good one. The reason I haven't showed you the rest of this is because that first rounder in 2018, Noah Dobson. This season so far, he has, in 48 games, 10 goals and 17 assists for 27 points. From the blue line, he's a 6 foot plus right-handed shot defenseman. Yeah, I think they're pretty happy with how that ended. To be honest, that's where this segment of the dissection ends. But honestly, I think they're happy with how it goes. And honestly, Dobson or Ruslan or Bolduc could get traded. And then this could continue. But for right now, we've got to go back up. We have to go up to Oleg Kvasha. Now, was Oleg Kvasha any good? He was a depth winger that wasn't great, but didn't suck. Ate a lot of minutes on the ice. Best this season was in 03-04 when he played 81 games, had 15 goals and 36 assists for 51 points. Not terrible, and way more than you or I will ever get. However, realizing that they wouldn't get better than that, the Islanders moved to trade him and would get a deal done in the 05-06 season with the then Phoenix Coyotes. It was Oleg Kvasha and a 2006 fifth-round pick, number 130, which would be used on Brett Bennett. And they would trade that to the Arizona Coyotes. Well, Phoenix Coyotes. Now, they did a very smart thing, because they took a round 3 pick for that. 71st overall. We have said in the past, if you've paid any attention, that after a certain point, the object is to accumulate as many draft picks as you can. Not horrible, right? Right. So they did a smart thing. They took that third rounder and they traded it to the Boston Bruins for a 4th and a 5th in 2006. They then moved the 4th to the Sharks for another 4th rounder and a 6th rounder in 06. All sorts of picks. But I think they regret this, as none of those picks ever panned out. But that third rounder that they wound up giving to Boston, yeah, that would be used on future Hall of Famer and all around jackass, Brad Marchand. So, if you hate Brad Marchand, you can thank the New York Islanders for giving him to the Boston Bruins. Yee. By the way, I call him a jackass, but that's just on the ice. Off the ice, I'm told he's a very wonderful person, does a lot in his community, etc., etc. The greatest compliment I can give him, though, is that I hate it when my team has to play against him. Maybe the Islanders should have held on to that pick. But that's where, unfortunately, the Islanders trade ends. By the way, here's the rest of those picks and what they got for them. Like I said, nothing, 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 and nothing. None of those ever became anything. So, back up we go, and over to Florida. Because that's the end of the dissection for the New York Islanders. How did Florida do here? Did they get anything good? I mean, yeah, they did. And, you know, the Islanders got some good things, too, after they got rid of Mike Milbury. Okay, let's start by talking about Olli Jokinen. He wasn't great his first couple of seasons in Florida. He kind of struggled. But for some reason, that third season, the switch flipped, and he became one of the best forwards in hockey. That season began a 6-season streak of at least 20 goals a season. That is honestly fantastic. He got within a couple points of a 100-point season at one point. Sadly, that last 21-goal season would not be with the Florida Panthers. They traded him at the end of the previous season. So what was that deal? Let's take a look. Olli Jokinen to the Phoenix Coyotes. I just cannot seem to spell coyote. And what would they get for him? A 2008 second round, 49th overall, Keith Ballard, and Nick Boynton. Okay. Boynton was over 6 feet, over 200 pounds, and was far more worried about accumulating penalty minutes than points. Never traded. On we move. The pick. Let's take a look at the pick. That pick would be traded. They traded that pick along with a 4th rounder to move up 3 spots, where they would grab Kobe Roback. That pick would be used on the forgotten Stahl brother, Jared. Roback was a big-bodied defenseman that sadly never panned out. And that ends this little dissection ligament over here. Keith Ballard, however, Ballard was a good defenseman. He played all 82 games for 2 seasons in Florida, was an offensive facilitator with 20-plus assists each of those 2 seasons. However, he would become tradable, and traded he would be. He would be packaged with Victor Oroskovich and sent to the Vancouver Canucks for Steve Bernier, Michael Grabner, and the 25th overall pick in 2010. That pick, by the way, would be Quentin Howden. So, Bernier spent most of his career as a depth forward, and he was never traded, so we move on. Grabner. Grabner failed to make the team on camp and was waived. Howden. Howden spent most of his time in the AHL, Russia, and Europe. So, kind of a nothing trade, sadly. And that's where that Olli Jokinen set ends. Now, time to do the big boy. Roberto Luongo. Luongo was a hell of a goalie for the Panthers for several seasons. But the Panthers, they weren't so great around him. Finally, they traded him during an attempt at rebuilding the franchise, and the package went as follows: Luongo, Lucas Krajicek, and a sixth round pick in 2006, which would become Sergei Shirokov, to the Vancouver Canucks. And what would they bring back for that package? Alex Old, Brian Allen, and Todd Bertuzzi. That's the definition of a blockbuster. Auld was a goalie who played 27 games for those Panthers. In those games, he would go 7-13-5, posting a 3.35 goals against average and an .888 save percentage. Never traded, so on we move. Brian Allen, defenseman, who was more interested in penalty minutes than he was in points. Where have we heard that before? Seems to be a thing. He would be eventually traded to the Carolina Hurricanes for Sergei Samsonov. But this was Samsonov at the end of his career, and he was very far away from the 70-point man he had been earlier in his career. He retired at the end of the season and was never traded. Now, Todd Bertuzzi. Beast of a man, great two-way forward. Kind of got in some trouble with the Canucks. Had some baggage, and that's why they needed to make that trade. Sadly, he only played 7 games for the Panthers, in which he had 7 points, before a herniated disc in his back would require surgery. While he was in recovery for 5 months, the Panthers would trade him to the Red Wings for Sean Matthias and a 2007 second-round pick. That pick would be Nick Spaulding. They would package it with a first-rounder in 2008, 9th overall, that would be Josh Bailey, and a 2008 second-rounder, 40th overall, that would be Aaron Ness. And they would send that to the Nashville Predators for Thomas Vokoun. Ooh, that's interesting. Vokoun was a very good goalie for quite some period of time for the Panthers, and honestly, not someone that gets talked about enough. But he was never traded and would leave in free agency. So on we go. Not long after they realized they were going to lose Vokoun, there was a new problem brewing with an old friend in Vancouver. You see, Roberto Luongo had begun to not like life in Vancouver. Despite almost winning a cup there and going to the playoffs quite a bit of the time, there seemed to be some sort of friction in Vancouver, and then he said openly into a live mic that his contract sucked. Go look it up on YouTube. You can find it. So, Vancouver did the only thing they could. They looked for trade partners. And Florida ponied up Sean Matthias and Jakob Markstrom and sent them back to the Canucks for Roberto Luongo and Steven Anthony. Steven Anthony doesn't play into this, never played a game in the NHL. The Panthers got Luongo, traded him off for stuff they wanted to make them better, then got him back again. Who wins this trade? The Panthers, I think. Honestly, I'm going to recant that. The Vancouver Canucks won this trade because they came within a hair's breadth of winning the Stanley Cup with Luongo as their goalie. At any rate, that's the end of this dissection. Let me know what you think of it. Next time, we're going back to the NFL, and we're going to find out what happens when you trade every pick you own in a draft to move up 7 spots. I will let you all ruminate on that, and in the meantime, if you like the content we make here, and you like this kind of stuff, make sure you smash like, make sure you subscribe to us, let us know how much you appreciate the work that goes into this, and we will see you later. Peace!